"Do you even know where you are, old man?" The voice was sharp, honed by discipline, and steeped in an arrogance that only youth and proven lethality could forge. Lieutenant Miller, a Navy SEAL whose physique seemed carved from granite, stood with his arms crossed, his shadow falling over the stooped figure before him. The man, Dennis Whitaker, looked every bit of his 83 years. He wore simple khaki pants, a worn blue polo shirt, and a faded baseball cap that did little to shield his weathered face from the relentless Coronado sun. He stood on the edge of the grinder, the sacred asphalt courtyard where SEALs are forged in pain and perseverance. Dennis's eyes, a pale but clear blue, were not on the formidable lieutenant. They were fixed on the obstacle course in the distance, lost in a memory half a century old. He didn't answer immediately, his silence seeming to grate on the officer's perfectly tuned nerves. "This is a restricted area," Miller pressed, stepping closer. A younger SEAL, a petty officer who mirrored Miller's posture, flanked him. "This isn't a museum. It's a training ground for the most elite warfighters on the planet, not a VFW hall for you to wander through and relive your glory days." Dennis finally turned his head, his gaze slowly moving from the horizon to the lieutenant's face. There was no anger in his eyes, no fear, only a profound and unsettling calmness. "I have permission," he said, his voice quiet, raspy with age but steady. Miller let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Permission? From who? The ghost of Chesty Puller?" He gestured dismissively at Dennis's attire. "Look at you. You walk onto the Naval Amphibious Base, wander into the heart of the Naval Special Warfare Center, and think a simple, 'I have permission' is going to cut it. I need to see your authorization, your ID." Now, slowly, with the deliberate movements of old age, Dennis reached into his back pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. It had been with him for decades, its creases holding the memory of places Miller had only read about in history books. From it he produced an old laminated identification card, the photo a ghost of a much younger man with the same clear eyes. Miller snatched the card from Dennis's hand. He glanced at it, a smirk playing on his lips. "Dennis Whitaker, this thing expired before I was born." He flipped it over. "No rank, no unit affiliation. This is a civilian contractor ID from the 70s. This is worthless." He flicked the card back at Dennis's chest. It fluttered to the ground. Dennis bent down with a soft grunt of effort to retrieve it. As he did, his other hand, which had been resting in his pocket, came into view. It was curled around a small metallic object. Miller's eyes narrowed. "What's in your hand?" he demanded, his voice dropping into a command tone. Dennis opened his palm. Resting in the center was a single worn silver dollar, its edges smooth from years of handling, a deep gouge marring the face of Lady Liberty. The younger SEAL chuckled. "What's that?" "Your good luck charm." Miller was less amused. His professional suspicion, always simmering just below the surface, boiled over. To him, this was a breach. An unknown, unauthorized civilian in the most sensitive part of the base, acting strangely. He saw a threat, or at least a nuisance that needed to be neutralized. The fact that the man was old and seemingly frail was irrelevant. The rules were the rules. "I think you and I are going to have a talk with base security," Miller said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "This little field trip of yours is over." He took a step forward, intending to place a hand on Dennis's arm and escort him away. A small crowd had begun to gather. A platoon of buds/candidates on a water break watched from a distance, their faces a mixture of curiosity and intimidation. A few instructors, their expressions unreadable, paused their work to observe the unfolding scene. The public nature of the confrontation seemed to fuel Miller's need to assert his authority. He was the guardian of this sacred ground, and he would not have it defiled by some confused old man. "Sir, that's not necessary," Dennis said, his voice still unnervingly calm. "I'm just here to pay my respects." "Respects to who?" Miller shot back. "The monkey bars. This isn't a cemetery." He pointed a rigid finger at the main gate. "You are leaving now, either on your own 2 feet or in handcuffs. Your choice." Dennis Whitaker's gaze drifted past the lieutenant, back towards the grinder. His hand tightened around the silver dollar in his pocket, the cool metal a familiar anchor in the swirling current of the present. The sharp, arrogant voice of the young SEAL faded into a dull drone, replaced by the hiss of rain and the suck of mud. The air, thick and humid, tasted of gunpowder and fear. It was the Mekong Delta, 1968. He wasn't 83, he was 24. Lean and hard, crouched in a flooded foxhole beside a kid from Ohio named Bobby. Rain plastered their hair to their foreheads. A firefight raged around them, the jungle erupting in flashes of green and orange. Bobby, barely 19, was trying not to let his teeth chatter. He pressed something cold and heavy into Dennis's hand. It was a silver dollar. "My dad gave it to me." Bobby yelled over the din of automatic weapons fire. "For luck. You hold on to it for me, Denny. You got better pockets." Dennis had just nodded, tucking it away, his focus on the tree line. That was the last thing Bobby ever said to him. The coin had been in his pocket ever since. He blinked, and the jungle was gone. The Coronado sun was back, hot and bright. The arrogant young officer was still there, his face a mask of impatience. Dennis simply looked at him, the memory giving him a placidity the SEAL couldn't possibly comprehend. From the edge of the growing crowd of onlookers, Seaman Apprentice Peterson watched, a knot tightening in his stomach. He was fresh out of A school, assigned to a logistical support unit on the base. He knew exactly who Lieutenant Miller was. Every junior sailor knew the SEALs were gods here, and you didn't look them in the eye unless you were told to. But Peterson's grandfather had been a corpsman at the Chosin Reservoir, a quiet man who carried a deep well of pain behind his eyes. He had taught Peterson one thing above all others: respect your elders, especially the ones who have been through the fire. What he was witnessing felt profoundly wrong. It wasn't just the disrespect, it was the sheer public nature of the humiliation. Miller was making an example of this old man, and no one was stepping in. Peterson felt a surge of something hot in his chest, a mix of fear and indignation. He was a nobody. Intervening directly would be career suicide. The lieutenant would chew him up and spit him out without a second thought. But he had to do something. He remembered the orientation briefing, the dozens of phone numbers they were told to memorize. One of them was for the office of the base commander, Captain Wallace. It was for emergencies, they'd said, for situations that required the highest level of attention. Peterson had scoffed at it then. What kind of emergency would a seaman like him ever report to the base CO? This felt like one. Slipping away from the edge of the crowd, he found a quiet spot behind a barracks building, his heart pounding against his ribs. He pulled out his cell phone, his fingers fumbling as he dialed the number. A crisp, professional voice answered. "Captain Wallace's office." "Yes, ma'am," Peterson stammered, his own voice sounding small and reedy. "This is Seaman Apprentice Peterson. Is there an immediate threat, Seaman?" The voice on the other end was patient but firm. "No, not a threat exactly." Peterson struggled to find the right words. "It's Lieutenant Miller. He's detaining an elderly civilian. He's being very aggressive, ma'am." In front of everyone, there was a pause. "And this civilian's name?" The old man said it. He said his name was Whitaker. Dennis Whitaker. He expected to be dismissed, to be told to report it through the proper channels, to call the master-at-arms. Instead, there was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, followed by a silence that stretched for a full 5 seconds.